we were still trying to get our way out of Mishnah Aleph in Pirkei Avos, and the Mishnah ends with this idea of asu siyag l'Torah. And just to get us back into sort of the context here, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who is the redactor, the publisher of the Mishnah, has to walk this very fine line of building a edifice that enables as many people as he wants to include to feel included in it. Meaning, if you're a rabbinic Jew, we want your voice in the Mishnah, even if we don't paskin like you, right? That's why we have the dissenting opinion. Right, he has to form a coalition, but he also has to be very clear about who's out. Remember, historically, the Gospels are written, let's say, the end of the 1st century. They're being promulgated the 2nd century. So if you walk into the bookstore of the 2nd century, so to speak, the Christians who at that point are still calling themselves Jewish Christians, their text is starting to circulate. So having the official version, right? What is the Pharisaic, the rabbinic? What is the frum response to that? Well, no, this is our Masorah. That's not our Masorah. And so Rebbe has to take all of that into consideration in identifying who's in and who's out, and that's the purpose, we said, of the first Mishnah, is to talk about what the academics will call the chain of Pharisaic tradition. Where did the Masorah come from? And one...
I've never heard that the Mishnah competed with the Gospel.
So Elias Bickerman, who was a fantastic historian, if not necessarily a big Talmud Chacham, he was a historian of, I think it's like ancient Greek and Roman, as well as Jewish history, taught at Columbia and at JTS. He points out that in the ancient world, the way you would establish your bona fides, the way you wouldn't walk into the classroom and say, here's my doctorate in education or law or whatever, you would trace back your chain of Masorah. You would say, I'm a doctor, and I learned under Dr. X, who learned under Dr. Y, and goes back generation after generation. The same thing for any skilled profession, law, blacksmithing. I'm making it up, but that is right. Who did you apprentice under? And if you want to belong to a certain guild, that guild can trace its history back. So what Bickerman claims is that is part of what's going on in the first chapter of Avos, and then he claims that the number of links in the chain in the first chapter of Avos is 14. We'll quibble a little bit with that calculation, but he believes that number is very intentional to compete with the first chapter of Matthew. I will not read all of the first chapter of Matthew to you, but I'll give you a little overview. This is Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. An account of the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac was the father of Jacob. And right, you're getting kind of the picture over here. I'm going to skip a couple of verses. Amram was the father of Aminadab, Aminadab the father of Nachshon, Nachshon the father of Salmon, Salmon was the father of Boaz. He goes through verse after verse over here. This is through, let's say, verse 14. Azor is the father of Tzadok, Tzadok the father of Achim, Achim the father of Eliud, Eliud the father of Elazar, Elazar the father of Matan, Matan was the father of Jacob, Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called the Messiah. That is the end of verse 16 in Matthew 1. Verse 17. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations, and from the deportation to Babylon to the Messiah, meaning to Jesus, 14 generations. So he sees this idea, which is emphasized in Matthew 1, of 14 links in the chain, so to speak, in sets that can trace Jesus all the way back and back to Abraham, that when Rebbe is compiling the Mishnah, he intentionally counters that with 14 links in the chain of Masorah in the first parak.
Yeah, but Matthew was written between 60 to 100.
Correct.
Why?
So if Matthew is out and published in the beginning of the 2nd century, so when Rebbe is canonizing the Mishnah and he's putting Avos together, he's saying, look, I know that if you want to establish something as being part in the ancient world, what gave you credibility was how far back can you trace yourself into antiquity. So if I want to show that the Torah Shabbal Peh has standing in antiquity, not only do I have to trace it back, but if I trace it back in the same with the same sort of structure as Matthew, then I'm showing that this is my tradition as opposed to that being my tradition. That's his claim. You didn't like that.
I don't like the fact that we were saying about Nasi, so it's important to have 14.
Yeah.
Because that's
It's arbitrary.
And also that it's almost saying like, okay, 14 is an important number. So then in Matthew, 14 is important. It makes sense that 14 should be an important number. And why it's important in Matthew.
No, yeah, us too. We have a 14 thing too.
I hear.
Credibility to the 14 in Matthew.
It doesn't give credibility to it as it reacts to it. It responds to it, and we don't like that, right? We want it to be independent of their tradition.
I'd say it's at least a reaction. It doesn't. I don't see the benefit.
Okay. What do you gain, right? What do you gain?
And what do you lose by saying, hey, these guys are important enough that I have to compare myself to them? Well, you lose.
What you gain is the average person has heard one side of the story, and you want to give them sort of the other side. I'm playing devil's advocate because I did my own.
People aren't interested, as the current state of Israel public relations will tell you.
Right.
You'd be like, oh yeah, well actually, here's the facts on the ground that Israel wasn't the aggressor. But like people aren't interested.
Losing argument. I hear. So I disagree with it more on just from the raw numbers. I think if you count the links in the chain in Avos, you'll get to more than 14. But I wanted to present it to you. I guess it didn't necessarily fly as.
Does he show his own account? Does he show in his book how he gets the 14?
I don't think so. I don't think he calculates it. Right.
He just say, hey, it's 14.
And Mark doesn't do this.
Mark does no. Oh, it's only in Matthew that you get the.
Mark is the first one that's written.
Yes.
Plus Matthew.
Okay. So the last thing we said in the first Mishnah is this idea of siyag, that the rabbis have the right to protect the Torah by adding to the laws. And I think we mentioned last time that doesn't sit necessarily so well with the other factions of Jews. The Rambam takes this idea of siyag and sort of makes it a centerpiece in here. Let me pass this around. This is a Mamrin of that borderline case of whether or not you're in or out. Remember, we just mentioned that we want to keep in as many people as possible, but if you are, and that's why it's in the Rambam and Hilchos Mamrim, if you are a Zakin Mamre, you're someone who was in the fold, but you're now sort of skirting the line and maybe starting to color outside the lines of behavior that seems like it's splintering off from mainstream Judaism. The way that happens is if you play fast and loose with siyag. So I'm going to read a couple of halachos from the Rambam, starting with chapter 1, halacha aleph through gimel. Based in Haggadah Yerushalayim, hein ikar Torah Shabbal Peh. The major court in Yerushalayim is the source for our continuing Torah Shabbal Peh. Vehem amudei ha'orah mehem choku mishpat yosel l'chol Yisrael. That's where law comes from. Ve'aleim hifticha Torah shenemar al pi Torah she'yorucha. The Torah that they're going to continue to adjudicate for you. Zu mitzvah saseh. V'chol hamamin b'Moshe Rabbeinu b'Torah. Anybody who believes in Moshe and his Torah, chayv lismoch ma'aseh hadas alehem v'lish'an alehem, is obligated to tie your religious practice and your understanding of halacha to whatever the Beis Din puts out there. Kol misha eino osa kol rasan, over below sasa, and anybody who doesn't do that, they're over on a negative commandment. Shekol chacham shemora al divreihem misosu b'chanek. Any chacham, this is the Zakin Mamre, who paskins opposite the Beis Din Hagadol, their death is b'chanek. Echad dvarim shalamdu osam mi pi hashamua, whether they got the thing that they're paskening because it is the Masorah, v'hein Torah Shabbal Peh, the echad dvarim shalimdu mi pi datam be'echad min hamido she'Torah nedreshes b'hem. I don't care, says the Rambam, if the reason the Beis Din paskin this is because they have it as a Masorah, or it's because they paskin this because they used one of the 13 attributes of logical derivation to get to that law. B'nir b'eineim shedavar kachu. And you want to say, well, you used logic. Well, I have my own logic. You don't get the right to do that. Once the Beis Din Hagadol paskin something, even if they arrived at that through logical deduction, you, Mr. Zakei Mamre, can no longer dissent and paskin that way for other people to act in practice. And it doesn't even matter if the Beis Din said that, you know what, there is no Masorah for this, there is no logical derivation, we're making a siyag. And this is something that's needed at the time. That's where we get all these gzeros, all these minhagim from. If it's any one of those three categories, says Rambam, you have a positive commitment to listen to the Beis Din even in as far as they're making a siyag. In other words, you can't differentiate in your Torah Shabbal Peh definition between Masorah that they got halacha l'Moshe Sinai or siyag that they definitely did not get at Har Sinai, but it is as equally as binding because the Beis Din Hagadol has put it out there.
When he's talking about Beis Din Hagadol, what is he talking about in his time?
That is a very good question that I don't know the answer to, because there is no Beis Din Hagadol in his time, right?
No.
So one of the things he mentions is if a practice becomes accepted by the entire Jewish people. So even if it's
he knew that wasn't true in his time.
That what if a practice was accepted by everybody?
Yeah,
It had that carries some weight.
I understand that, but barring Shabbos, something like that, he knew the Jews of Taiman. He knew the Jews.
Right now, to the best of my knowledge, there is no Orthodox Jew who says you can have chicken and milk. Why? It is not in the Torah Shebechtav. It is not in the Torah Shabbal Peh. It is a siyag, right? And the Rambam's gonna. The reason I didn't pick that out of a hat, I'm gonna let's let him speak for himself in a minute.
Actually, there are.
There are. That's fascinating. Who, the Samaritans?
No. They've come out now with that new milk.
Oh yeah, the like factory made milk.
Yeah, it's not milk.
Okay.
It's not milk.
Not milk, right?
You
can
can
go
have
for
cheese
some
too.
chicken parm.
So
You could do chicken parm.
there are actually
That's because they're doing it in, I think, Singapore and Israel already.
there are certification agencies that won't like the OU won't certify the plant-based pork.
Impossible burger? Oh.
No, the Impossible
Right.
pork
Oh.
because of like
it's-
Mara Zion.
But Bacos they will.
Right,
But
right.
Bacos they will.
It's
And in this country, United States, okay, we all eat quinoa on Pesach.
Yeah.
In Israel, they don't eat quinoa.
that's fascinating.
Ashkenazim.
Right.
I know it's hard enough.
So
That irritates me, by the way. Whatever.
I'm just telling you what it is. I remember there was a time when Baltimore ate it and New York didn't. But now New York eats it.
Right. Okay, so in the second parak in Halacha Gimel, which is there on your sheet, the Rambam says as follows: "B'med dvarim amurim, b'dvarim shelo asur nosan kedei lasos siyag l'Torah, ela kashar dinei Torah. Aval dvarim shera'u Beis Din ligzor ula asur and lasos siyag." If Beis Din saw that there is something that's necessary to make a fence around the Torah, in pashut isurim b'chol Yisrael. This is what I was just telling you. If the Isser now has spread out to the entire Jewish people, ein Beis Din gadol acher yachol la'akron u'la'atiran afilu haya gadol min harishonim. Normally we say that a later court can uproot what an earlier court did if they're greater than them in some sort of
Knowledge and
calculation.
wisdom.
Yeah, something like that.
Number of wisdom. Sorry.
Right. Maybe it's their age, whatever. That, says the Rambam, holds true every place except for this one area, siyag. If the earlier Beis Din did their decree because of siyag, you can't uproot it, even if normally you could through the fact that Beis Din A made a kal v'chomer, and Beis Din B says, we have a different way of viewing the logic here. So you might think that is more unable to be uprooted. No, it's siyag specifically, says Rambam, that you can't uproot even if you have a greater Beis Din. And then the last halacha I want to read for you is number 9. Hol v'yesh leBeis Din ligzor ulasar davar hamutar. Since Beis Din can make this decree and forbid something that is mutar, v'yamod isur ladoros, and that isur now stands the test of time. V'chein yesh lehem lahatir isurei Torah lefi shah, and they can even permit something that the Torah forbids in a temporary fashion. Mahu zeh she's hira Torah. So then, how do you square that with the following halacha from the Torah. Lo sosif alav lo sigra mimenu. How do you, right? This is the natural conflict between asu siyag l'Torah, when the Torah itself says don't add and don't detract from the Torah. You're, by definition, when you make a siyag, you're adding to the Torah, right? So how do you square those two things? Fair question?
Yes.
Okay. This is where the Rambam's his the point he wants to get across is, when the Torah says don't add or detract, it means don't add or detract from the Torah. Whatever you do, you have to be very clear about what is biblical and what is just a siyag. What's the case? This is what I was just telling you. Hare kasu b'Torah, it says in the Torah, Losav ashel gedi b'chalev imo. Right? Don't see the kid in its mother's milk. That is the basic shot of the words. What we know, what's our Masorah? You can't cook any meat in any milk, right? Aval basar ha'of mutar b'chalav min haTorah. You can have fowl and milk from the Torah. Im yavo beis din v'yater basar chai b'chalav hareze gorea. If a beis din would come along and say, you know what, the Torah only says lo savashel gedi, which is a domesticated animal, but a chaya you should be allowed to cook in milk. Hareze gorea. Then you've detracted from the Torah. The Torah said lo savashel, and we have a Masorah that the meaning of that is all flesh, all meat, all basar, I guess. So if someone comes along and reduces that expansive definition, they've reduced the scope. Thank you, of the Torah. V'im yasar basar ha'of, and if you were to come along and say biblically that you can't have chicken and milk, v'yomashu b'chlal hagati, because it's like the domesticated goat, the who asur min haTorah, hare, and you make the claim that fact that it's forbidden is not an additional siyag, but it's rather biblical. Hare ze mosif, then you've added to the Torah. Aval im amar basar ha'of mutar min haTorah. But if you were to say that you can certainly have chicken and milk, anu nasar osovano dia la'am shehu gzer shelo yavo min hadavar chova v'yomer ha'of mutar, and you tell everybody, hey, everyone, you can have chicken and milk. The only thing is, the rabbis are nervous that you're going to end up eating milk and meat, so we're going to forbid you from having chicken as a preventative fence. That is mutar mipnei shelo nisfarish kach achaya mutaris shaharei lo nisfarsha, right? Then it's you get the distinction over here, right? The Rambam is trying to make very clear that a siyag is not min haTorah. Nevertheless, it carries that power that it can't be uprooted. That's the borderline where we get into cases of if you're willing to push up against siyag, the way, let's say, Jesus mocks washing the hands, right? So that's when you've started to move outside of the bounds of what is accepted Torah Shabbal Peh, and that's where Rebbe is trying to draw the line between keeping you in the Mishnah versus excluding you from kind of the bigger tent. I wanted to start Mishnah Beis, but maybe what do you guys want to do? Mishnah Beis, or should we move on to Yechezkel?
Let's do Mishnah Beis, and we'll do Yechezkel next week.
We can start it.
Okay.
Whatever.
I don't think I even put out the Mishnah. Okay, so let's do that.
You read it.
I'll read it.
We'll be familiar with that.
Okay.
Both washing hands with Jesus.
Yeah.
What's that?
Shimon
You missed
HaTzaddik
Matthew. Yeah. We're learning Matthew.
was the
Yeah,
last
you
of
missed-
the members of
you
the
missed
Great
Matthew.
Assembly.
Okay. Shimon HaTzaddik Mishari Knesses Hagdola. Shimon the righteous. Why was he called the righteous?
Well, he was
Any takers?
really a holy guy, but he was the guy that Alexander
We're
bowed down to.
gonna get to that whole story in just a second. So Simon the righteous was from the remnants of the Knesset Hagdola. Hu Haya Omer used to say the following: Al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed. On three things the world stands. Al haTorah. What's that? Like learning Torah. Okay. Following the Torah,
Right.
something like that. V'al avoda. What's that?
Davening and or Beit HaMikdash.
Well, which one is Shimon HaTzaddik talking about?
He's talking about davening.
He's talking about
davening.
He's talking about davening.
Oh well, actually no.
When did
served in
Shimon?
the Beit HaMikdash.
When did Shimon HaTzaddik live?
I think, yeah.
Right, he was in the Beit HaMikdash. He was the Kohen Gadol.
He was a Kohen Gadol in the Beis Hamikdash. So when he talks about avoda, what do you think he's probably talking about?
They were in the temple.
Well,
I get now. There's world stands on the vote in the Beis Hamikdash.
okay. So al Torah v'al avoda v'al gemilos chasadim, and on the practice of acts of piety is the translation from Dr. Cole. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So if that's true, what happens when the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed and there is no avoda?
The world only stands on two things.
That doesn't work out so well. So we're going to come back to that when
the tripod kind of falls over.
Right. We're going to come back to that when we get to the end of the parak. There's a little bit, from my opinion, there's a little bit of a chiasm in the whole first chapter. But
another three things.
Yeah, you have another three things at the end. Exactly right.
Truth, justice, and peace.
So a few things to point out. a few things to point out in Mishnah Beis. So Shimon HaTzaddik, I think we all pointed out that he was the Kohen Gadol, right?
Yes.
Why don't we mention that he's the Kohen Gadol? In fact, we don't mention that anybody's a Kohen Gadol in all of Pirkei Avos. Why?
Because it's not relevant.
It's actually very relevant. The Kohanim were the teachers. That was like part of their job. Part of their job was to be part of the Masorah. They were actually the transmitters of the Masorah before the rabbis.
Because if you mention that he's the Kohen Gadol, he's then the elite, and if he's the elite, he is not then speaking to the people. So you want.
So I think that's headed in the right direction. Who else were the Kohan? Who else were Kohanim? The Sadducees. Right, we get in the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, we have to make the Kohen Gadol swear that he won't perform the service on Yom Kippur in the way that the Sadducees want it performed, but rather the way the rabbis want it performed. And then the Kohen has to, start crying that they would even suspect that he would do such a thing. Why would they suspect that? Because most of the Kohanim Gedolim in the Second Temple were Sadducees, which is a mind-blowing thing.
And then they died every year.
Right. But it's a mind-blowing thing to think that, like, to put it in our terms, if you go to shul on Yom Kippur and the chazan,
like 45 out of 60 times it's done by a Christian guy,
or reform or something, but not a Orthodox rabbi. That's what they were dealing with, not just in the Beis Hamikdash, but also on the Sanhedrin. There's a whole story of Shimon ben Shetach and how he kind of, when we get to him, we'll talk about how he transformed the Sanhedrin to be staffed with rabbis as opposed to Sadducees. But one of the reasons we omit the Kohanim from the chain of the Masorah is that Rebbe is trying to sort of sanitize out the whole Sadducee thread. We don't want to mention that he's the Kohen Gadol. He's here because he's Shimon HaTzaddik. The fact that he's called Tzaddik is actually addressed by Ben Sira and Josephus.
Because he also rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem.
So excellent. Let's get into what he did. Where do we want to start? I guess the oldest part is the Tosefta. So in the Tosefta of Sota, chapter 13, there's a few mentions. We'll just kind of breeze through his life a little bit over here. In Mishnah Vav, it says as follows: Shimon HaTzaddik shama davar mi beis kodesh hakadoshim. Shimon HaTzaddik hears a voice from heaven. Vatilas avidasa de yemar sano letata lehechala v'nerag giskelnus, bless you, ubatlug zerosov ubeloshan arame shama. So what did he hear? The decree that the enemy intended to bring against the temple is annulled, and Galiskakus, which I think Steinsaltz is right, is Caligula, has been killed, and his decrees have been voided, and all of this Shimon HaTzaddik hears in the Aramaic language. So the thing that's most helpful for us over here is just dating of Shimon HaTzaddik in parallel with Caligula. Kolzman Shahaya Shimon HaTzaddik Kayam. The entire time that Shimon HaTzaddik is alive and well and working in the Beis Hamikdash, Haisa Ner Maravi Tadir, the western the lamp stays lit. Mishameis, when he dies, Holchu Matzo Shekava. They went and found that the Ner Tmidi had been extinguished. What's that? L'sar. This week's parsha. Mikan ve'elech Motzino so pamim shekavo pamim adolik. And then it depended on how righteous the Kohen Gadol was. Sometimes they would come and find that the candle was still going, and other times it would go out, because if you're not righteous, there's no reason for the candle to continue.
Wasn't Shimon HaTzaddik the one where when he dies they stop saying the name as it's pronounced?
I want to say that's Yochanan Kohen Gadol.
Yeah.
I think. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
Kozman haya Shimon HaTzaddik hayam haisa maracha tadira. The flame, they would set up the wood to burn on the mizbeach. It would just continue. The flame didn't need any replenishing. You could bring all the korbanos you wanted on the original fire starters. It didn't go out. The only reason they would add fuel to it is because the Torah says that you're supposed to add, but it wasn't out of necessity. Shimon HaTzaddik Tashish Kochel Shel Maracha after he passes away, the fire doesn't have the strength that it used to have. They had to continue adding fuel to it constantly. When he's around, there was a special blessing in the shtei halechem. Ubelechem hapanim, shtei halechem mischalekes ba'atzeres l'kohanim v'lechem hapanim b'regel l'chol hamishmar l'anshei mishmar yesh mehem she'ochlin v'sovim v'yesh she'ochlin umosirin. There was such a blessing in the bread that when Shimon HaTzaddik was around, that people could basically have a tiny bite and either be full or even leave some over. Again, just like Sarah, right? There's a bracha in the dough. They only had a kazayas to eat from, and it was still more than enough. Okay, we'll skip that. Shana shemeisba Shimon HaTzaddik. The year that Shimon HaTzaddik was going to die, Amar lehem b'shana zu ani meis. He knew it already. He tells the rabbis, "I'm dying this year." Amar lo minayin ata yodea. How do you know? Amar lehem. He says to them, "Kol yimos haKippurim hayazakin echad lovush begadim levanim umiskasa levanim nichnas imi v'yotze imi." Every year when I would go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom Kippur, there was a guy who would come with me. He was dressed in all white. And
come in and go out.
Yeah, he would come in and go out. Shana zu nichnasimi v'lo yotze. But this year he went in with me. He never came back out. La'achar haregel chala. So after Sukkot he gets sick. Shivas yamim umeis, and then he passes away 7 days later. Mishamei Shimon HaTzaddik pasku milavarich b'shem. That's what you were saying. After Shimon HaTzaddik passes away, they stopped saying the blessing with Hashem's explicit name. Nimnu echav milavarich b'shem. Right. So where
are you quoting from?
This is Tosefta Yud Gimel Ches.
Yeah, I'm not so crazy, huh?
Not so crazy at all.
And he's buried near French Hill. Well, that's at least.
Okay. Do we want to do the story of his two sons in the temples, the temple they started, or meeting with Alexander?
I forgot the one with the two sons.
Alexandria.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
No, not Alexandria, in Elephantine.
Yeah.
So there are two mishnayos in Menachos that talk about if a person
had like a real status. Like
it talks about whether or not if a person pledges a korban in Beit Chonyo. So what is Beit Chonyo? This is the temple of Onias in Elephantine. Tani Kamanda Amar Beit Chonyo Lav Avodas Kochavim. Who there's an opinion that this Beit Chonyo is not considered idolatry. The Tani also Shana Shemei Shimon HaTzaddik. The year that Shimon HaTzaddik died, we just finished talking about. Amar Lahem Shana Zu Hu Meis. He says this is the year that I'm going to die. Amru lo minayin ata yodea. Amru lahem kol yom kippurim nizdamen li zaken echad lavush levanim v'nisatif levanim nechnas imi v'yotzimi. Shana zu nizdamen li zaken echad lavush shchorim. So here, a little different than the Tosefta. Right. The elder person is wearing dark clothes and nisatif shchorim v'nichnas imi v'lo yotzimi. La'achar haregel chala shivas yamu u'meis v'nimnu echad v'kohanim milavarich b'shem b'shas peti raso. Amr lehem. So now he's on his deathbed, and he says to the rabbis, Chonyav b'ni yeshamish tachti. I want Chonyo to be the next Kohen Gadol after me. Niskanabo Shimi Achiv. So Chonyo has a brother, Shimi, who is jealous over this because he was next in line. Shahaya Gadol Mimenu Shtei Shanim Umechsa. He was 2.5 years older. Amarlo Ba Valamdecha Seder Avodah. Let me show you, O brother of mine, how to do the avoda in the Beis Hamikdash. What this tells you in between the lines is that the Chonyo was an Amaretz, right? He didn't know and needed someone to sort of teach him.
He wasn't of age.
No, he had to have been old enough to perform the avoda.
But Shimon HaTzaddik didn't realize that he was a Amaretz.
To me, there's kind of like shades of either Eli HaKohen or maybe Shmuel, whose children didn't necessarily go in their ways.
A more righteous dude.
Maybe.
I mean.
So what does he do? Hilbishu be'unkali v'chagru b'tziltzol hemidu etzel hamizbeach. So he puts a tunic on him and girds him with a ribbon and stands him up in front of the mizbeach. Amar lahem la'achiv ha'kohanim, and he tells all the kohanim, Re'u ma nadar zeh v'kiyam lo havav. You know what my brother did? He made a promise to his girlfriend to dress up and wear her stuff. Also, on the day that I'm going to go be the Kohen Gadol, I'm going to wear the either your clothes or maybe the stuff that you gave me. But the point is he's embarrassing him because of how much of an Amaretz this guy is. He dresses him up in clothing that's not appropriate for the Kohen Gadol and makes a laughing stock of him. But the Kohanim see through this; they know what he did, and now they want to kill not Chonyo, but the brother Shimi. I'm sorry, I had that wrong. Right, they want to kill Chonyo, not Shimi. So So Chonyo runs away to Alexandria of Mitzrayim. Ubana sham mizbeach v'hel alav l'shum avodas kochavim. He makes his own temple over there and worships idolatry. Ukeshishamu chachamim b'davar amar mazeh shelo yared la kach hayared la alachas kama v'kama divrei Rabbi Meir. Amrlo Rabbi Yehuda. So this is lo kach haya ma'isa ella lo kibel alav chonyo shahaya shimi achiv gadol mimenu shtei shanim umechsa v'afal pikein niskana bo chonyo b'shimi achiv Amrlo bavel amdecha seder avoda v'hilbisha. This is the same story. Roma nadar v'kayim lo avav. Sachlahem. So in this take of the story, he tells the Kohanim what happened. Sachlahem kol hamu'ura. He tells them the whole story. Bikshu laharog es chonyo. They want to kill Chonyo. In other words, in the second version of the story, Shimi is the one that gets dressed up. They now want to kill Chonyo for this indignity. V'rotzu achav achar lebeis amelech. V'rotzu achav kol ro. So Amar zehu shahalach Alexandria sham Mitzrayim ubana sham mizbeach v'halalav l'shem shamayim. So there's a question in the Gemara as to whether or not this temple, which stood for hundreds of years, we have letters from Elephantine, we have a lot of data about this temple. It's Mazash Baruch. Leave that.
It's gone now, though.
It is gone now. But there were questions about whether or not if you make a promise to bring a korban and you bring it in Beit Chonyo, are you Yotze or not? The Gemara plays that down and says it's more like
like Obama.
No, it's like you whatever. The bottom line of the Gemara is that it's not necessarily completely avodah zarah, but it's not you can't fulfill your obligation.
There are other temples there too.
Jewish temples?
No,
but that the one in Elephantine was Jewish.
It's a small island.
Yeah.
It's a small island.
Yeah.
Where's Elephant?
It's
near Cyprus?
No, it's near Aswan.
Aswan? Egypt.
Yeah, it was the border between Egypt and Nubia. There was a lot of trade that went there.
They had a garrison. There were soldiers there. There was a whole Jewish troops.
Yeah, there were Jews there
that were stationed there. So they needed a shul. Okay. One more story about Shimon HaTzaddik. The Gemara, this is Yuma 69a, which says as follows: the Esrim v'chamisha b'Teves, on the 25th of Teves, Yom Har Grizim hu delo lemispe. That's the day of Har Grizim. You're not allowed to make a eulogy on that day. Why? What happened? Yom Shabikshu Kutim as Beis Eloheinu Melachsandros Mokdan Lahach Rivo. That was the day where the Samaritans the Kutim wanted to get the Beis Hamikdash destroyed, and they were going to use Alexander the Great to do so. V'nasu lahem, and he gave permission. Bo'u v'hodiu es Shimon HaTzaddik, and they came. Everyone, the messengers come running to Shimon HaTzaddik and tell him what's happening. That Alexander is on his way with the Samaritans to destroy the Beis Hamikdash. Ma also, what did he do? Lavash bigdei kahuna, v'nisativ b'bigdei kahuna. This is the same language as what he saw the man walking in dressed in the clothing. He dresses up in the full garb of Yom Kippur. Umiyakar Yisraelimo, and he has all the dignitaries of the Jewish people with him. V'avukul shel or biyadim, they're carrying torches. V'chol halayla halalu holchem mitzadzeh, halalu holchem mitzadzeh. The whole night you have one troop on their way to meet the other. Ad sha'alamud hashachar, until morning breaks. Kivan sha'alamud hashachar, amar lahem mi halalu. When morning comes, so Alexander turns to the Samaritans and he says, "Who are these people?" Amar lo Yehudim shemardu b'cha. These are the Jews who are rebelling against you. Kivan she'igil la'Antipateris, when they get to this is a city, Antipater, named after Antipater. Zarcha chama ufagu zebazeh. Now it's full morning. Each group can see the other. Kivan shara Shimon HaTzaddik. When Alexander sees Shimon HaTzaddik, yarim merkavto v'ishtachav elefanav. He comes off of his royal chariot and bows down on the ground before Shimon HaTzaddik. So the Samaritans are not too happy with this. This is not how they were expecting this to play out. They're like, you're Alexander the Great. You're great, right? What are you doing bowing down to this Jew? The appearance of this person always appears before my successful battles. In other words, he's leading me out into battle, so that's why I'm bowing down to them. Amar lahem lama batem. Why did you come? Shimon says to Alexander, the reason I came is because the house where we daven for you, that your kingship should not be destroyed. I'm going to let these goyim convince you to destroy it. Who are the people that you're talking about? Amrulo kutim halalu. It's these Samaritans that are standing before you. I put them in your hands, do with them as you please. Miyad nakvum bi'ikvehem utalum biznove suseim v'hayu megaranosan al hakotzim v'al habarkanim ad she'yigiu lahar grizim. So they immediately basically tie them to the horses and drag them all the way to Har Grizim. Kivin she'yigiu lahar grizim charashuhu zaruhu karshinim. Then they basically destroy the whole temple over there. They seed it and plow it, and they make a whole festival that they've overcome the Samaritans. I'm not going to go through the details because we're a little late on time, but this is one of those twice told tales that I don't know if we included when we did that series of stories in the Agadata that are mirroring stories in Tanakh. This is there are many elements here that parallel the story of takers. Megillus Esther. Right? You have the king who's being misled by his advisors, and then when he realizes that actually the Jew was there to do good for him, he hands over the advisors into the hand of the Jew to do with as they see fit.
We did not do that one.
We did not do that
No,
one.
we did
Okay,
not.
now you have it on record. The only other thing I'll point out very quickly is this story, almost in its entirety, is also available in Josephus. In Antiquities, Book 11, 317 through 345, we get a different name of the king. We get Sanballat, and instead of Shimon HaTzaddik, he's Yadua, the high priest. But other than that, all the parts of the story are the same.